So, bonsoir, dear friends. Welcome to JCB Live. I'm so excited for all of you to meet a very talented man. He lives out of fabulous Texas. And can you believe his name is John Jackson? He is an intellectual and privacy lawyer. Yes, we're having an attorney on the show, which is a big surprise. We love them, but it's typically far away, but today we like them close. Not only he is charming and seductive, and on top of it, he loves wine. In fact, he started a blog and has thousands and thousands of followers. He's a great success. He loves wine. He loves traveling. He loves people. And he has a lot of great things to tell us all about the world of wine, law, privacy, intellectual property, and beyond. Mr. Jackson, I'm calling you to come through the court. Woo! Look at that.
Very nice. Well done.
Bonjour. How is Dallas today?
Bonsoir, JCB. Everything is great.
Bonsoir. So were you born in one of the most exciting cities in the world, Dallas, Texas?
I was actually not. I was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in fact, and then went to law school in Illinois at the University of Illinois, and then kept working my way south to get out of the snow and the cold weather, and then ended up in Dallas after that.
And now you couldn't go back, could you?
No, it'd be pretty tough. Even now it's 70 degrees and sunny, and I was out on the patio earlier, so that's a big difference for sure.
Well, I'm glad to celebrate to you because of your great success in wine. But before we go to wine, what attracted you about the legal aspect of the world, and explain us your whole legal background?
Sure. So growing up, I knew I wanted to go to business school or to law school. And unfortunately, I had a problem with math. And so business school didn't work so well. And I tried the GMAT, of course, a practice test, and the LSAT, also a practice. And I blew the doors off the LSAT and did okay on the GMAT, but I could get into a much better graduate school if I went to law school. And so I did that, and everything just clicked. And so what I decided to do was focus on kind of business law. And I started out there because it kind of combined my business background and interests with the legal side. And that was a great way to start out.
Very exciting. And I understand you're working with a lot of great friends and their wineries. So you decided to focus onto privacy and intellectual property. So as I have more 21 today, because it's a day where we need the ultimate refreshment. Tell us why you focused on that, and what did it bring to you then to wine?
Sure. So I started out actually doing mostly intellectual property. There was a big, huge boom in patent infringement litigation, especially in Texas. And I was kind of in the middle of that. And so for a number of years, I did mostly patent infringement litigation. And that was very lucrative and very successful. And then what happened is I was traveling a lot for work and doing a lot of business dinners, and also just some dinners by myself, though. If I had to do a deposition, for example, I would get ready for the next day and then I'd be ready for dinner. And so just sitting there eating dinner by myself, I would get bored sometimes. And so I started going to nicer restaurants and then taking pictures of the food and the wines and then posting them, and not really knowing what I was doing. But then to my surprise, everyone started following me and it kind of took off. So kind of went from there, and that's what gave me the idea.
I love it. So it shows us that from one profession to the other, so one passion to the other. Was food and wine always your passion as you grew up?
It really wasn't. And so that kind of came on later. My parents we never really went out to restaurants very much, and they never really drank much wine. And so that's really something that came about later. Of course, in law school and college and so forth, I would have the usual, beer and vodka and so forth, but really nothing special. And then what happened is, after I became an attorney, I was working with one of my partners and my colleagues, Chip Babcock, who's a very well-known media attorney who does a lot of work for Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Phil and some other very prominent people. And so we were at a business dinner one night, and then he ordered a very, very nice bottle of wine. And so I had that wine, and that was kind of an eye opener for me. I'd never had anything quite like that before. And it was just really, really something that turned the lights on for me. And it was kind of an aha moment and what really got me interested in wine.
And how does it turn your ha moment? Tell us, because, for me, I was born and raised, and the French culture is very much you're a child, you taste wine, and it's so much part of the food table as a food ingredient almost. How did it create that ha for you? Because I'm always intrigued to hear about every individual story that is so different for each of us.
Yeah, so at that time it was a Napa Cabernet, and this was maybe 2008 or 2009 or so. And until then I'd had, the usual wine, $10, $15, $20 a bottle, whatever they serve at by the glass type opportunities for business events, and nothing really special. And so usually I wouldn't even drink it. But this time we had it, and there was just something about it. The aromatics were explosive, and the mouthfeel was totally different. There was a complexity and intensity like I'd never experienced before. The finish just went on forever. And It was completely unlike anything I had ever had before. And that was even with my first sip before I'd even tried it with the food. And of course, then pairing it with the food, this was at a steakhouse. So I had it with a steak. And of course, it was a perfect pairing with that. And it was just really, really an eye-opening experience for me. And then 6 months later, I was in Napa for the first time because I was so excited about it. And it kind of all went from there.
And what do you recommend for people who are listening to us and who don't necessarily drink a lot of wine? And how do you recommend they start to be curious? What should be their path as you've lived it yourself?
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends on the person, but I know oftentimes people tend to appreciate some wines with a little bit of sweetness at first. So one path could potentially be, something like a Mosel Riesling, for example, maybe a good start. Very low in alcohol, and also kind of refreshing and easy to drink. But if they're not really into the sweetness, then I would suggest maybe something that's a little bit more fruit forward and that doesn't have a lot of high alcohol and tannins, because I think that's what can kind of be off-putting to some people if it's a real high-powered alcohol wine with maybe 15, 16% alcohol and a lot of tannin. So I would say maybe something like even like a Cru Beaujolais or something along those lines might be a nice way to start.
That's a great advice. And now, how did you start to post, and what do you think is the power of social media today? Because you have a big following, so how do you attribute it? And why did you start even at the first place to do it?
Sure. So yeah, I was doing a lot of these meals by myself when I was traveling, and I was on the airplane a lot and just sitting there at the restaurant by myself. And I was already caught up on work and so forth, and then just kind of tinkering around with pictures. And one of my clients was actually Yelp, and so I posted a little bit to the Yelp mobile app and had some food pictures, but there wasn't so much interaction with that. So then I got started on Instagram, and then that's where I got the response, and it kind of caught on very, very quickly. And I think a large part of it was my writing, because I'm actually a fairly accomplished writer. And so I would write more lengthy captions before that was really a trend. And so a lot of people liked enjoying the story behind the wines. And I wouldn't just do a picture and then post it. I would actually do some research and teach people things and explain the history of the wine or more about the grape varietal, those sorts of things. And everyone seemed to enjoy that. And then, at the time, my pictures weren't also all that great, but then as time went on, then I learned to become a better photographer as well, and just kept tightening everything up and getting better and better.
And it's amazing to me, and I think you're a great example for everyone. And I know our friend Carla is with us tonight because you know her very well.
I do.
You went to do your WSCT. So explain to the world what that is and why did you go through that stage and that additional step of wine knowledge and education? Because that's a big deal.
It is, yeah, especially when you get to some of the upper levels. And so it started out, I'm at a wine club in Dallas, and it's kind of like a country club for wine drinkers. And so a bunch of friends will we'll get together, and Chef Dad is a member, of course. And
Oh, we love Chef Dad.
yeah. And so we'll get around, and then, for example, if we show up on a Friday night, everyone will bring one bottle, and it will be a nice bottle, and then we'll open it, and then we'll share it with everyone. And so you maybe bring one bottle, but you could try 7 or 8 while you're there. And a lot of times we'll present the wines blind. And so someone would just hand me a glass and ask me what it was. And of course, it becomes very competitive when a bunch of guys sit around and try to do anything. It becomes competitive. And so I wanted to become better at that. And so that's how it started. And so I took my first WSCT course to become a better blind taster, and also to be able to evaluate wines in a more insightful manner. Because before, I knew I liked this wine and didn't like that wine, but I didn't really know why. And so I wanted to have a more, I guess, sensible approach to evaluating wines, so that I could be consistent with my evaluations and really learn more about why I liked what I did.
Very cool. Well, I really having a toast to you, because that's amazing. You've accomplished level 4. So before you tell us about level 4, give us a thought of this wine, because we're going to move then to the Raymond Sauvignon Blanc. But what do you think of those bubbles? I mean, we're having Burgundy, Chardonnay, Pinot blended together as, I feel, one of the most fabulous expression of Burgundy.
Yeah, so first of all, I appreciate the name behind it and the meaning. Of course, 21 meaning the the department number from the French government for the Côte d'Or, which I really enjoy. And I actually did a video about Cremant and how it's such an incredible value. You have the Champagne method, and you have just fruit from a region other than Champagne, and certainly high quality fruit coming from Burgundy for sure. So I think definitely Cremant is an excellent value, and one that I've definitely been encouraging people to try.
Thank you for that. Thank you. So now let's go to a very cool wine. And guess what? Dear friends, screw cap. Look at this. I didn't need a corkscrew, even though we love to use the corkscrew, but look at how great it pours. And then you could put it back in the fridge or in the ice or in any other way you want it. And this is the screw cap from the north coast of Raymond 2020 vintage. Very exciting with that. So how would you describe this as a level 4 good writer?
So I should mention I've completed my last exam, but I won't get the results until January. So we'll knock on wood here, and hopefully those results will be positive. But I've completed all the coursework and just waiting for those last results.
That's a huge deal.
Yeah,
Wow.
Certainly I'm getting lots of lemon and the expected gooseberry, a little bit of grapefruit.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly more, I would say, more elegant than what you would get from, say, a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. A little bit kind of a little bit reminiscent of a Bordeaux Blanc, except with more vibrant fruit.
I agree with this. I love this vibrancy on the fruit. Do you find, what kind of fruits or flower do you, or vegetables for that matter, do you feel here?
I would say a little bit of perhaps blossom, maybe like orange blossoms. Like if you're in Scottsdale and in March, you smell that citrus blossom in the air. You get a little bit of that. Certainly a little bit of the herbaceous quality, a little bit of grassiness, but not overly pronounced grassiness. So I think it's there, but it's in good balance.
So is it a good buy for people to get this today?
Absolutely, I would think so. And one of my favorite pairings with Sauvignon Blancs, especially from California, is ahi tuna. I think it's an incredible match with seared ahi tuna.
I would agree. And even tuna tartare with a little bit of a avocado base would be amazing on this.
I
Yes.
agree. Absolutely.
So you're a big wine collector as well. So give us some of your tips as far as wine collecting, because I know it's one of your favorite activity, collecting phenomenal bottles of wine and building a great collection for the future.
It is. And so I've certainly learned a number of things along the way. One is that first you have to know yourself before you start running out and buying a bunch of wine. Oftentimes, some people will just like one wine and then run right out and invest heavily in it, but then their cellar will be too heavily weighted in one region. And then a year later, they might try wine from, Burgundy or the Northern Rhone or some other region and decide that, well, I really like Côte Rôtie as well, but here I've spent all my money on these other wines and now I don't have any Côte Rôtie.
That's right.
So I think they should taste broadly and widely before they start investing heavily, and then also taste some aged wines and then compare whether or not you really like aged wines to younger wines, because I think a lot of people, some people really like aged wines, but other people, they age these wines or buy all these wines with age, and then they discover they actually like them younger. And that's a problem as well. So I think it's very important to know yourself before you start buying heavily. That's certainly my main tip, I would say.
And, enlighten all of us on the art of collecting, because I think sometimes people hear the word collector and they think they need millions to be able to buy extraordinary bottle of wines, but I don't think it's the case. I think collecting means accumulating a great cellar and petit à petit aging wines and allowing wines to give time. Give us your version of it.
No, that's absolutely right. And so I think the other thing people should do is figure out why they're in the collecting pastime. Is it because they want to enjoy wines with age and experience them with more complexity as they mature? Or they're really in it to make money, for example? If they're just doing it as part of their investment portfolio, then certainly their buying strategy would be much different than if you're an individual who plans to drink all those bottles at some point in the future. Then you don't have to worry about appreciation, and you can worry just about what you enjoy and what you think you like in the future. And it makes it a lot easier. And in that case, you can also just buy 1 bottle, 2 bottles, 3 bottles at a time, and you wouldn't need to buy original wooden cases of wine, for example. So you're absolutely right. I think there's an approach for people who want to collect at all different price points and at all different asset levels.
And what's the right amount of bottles to keep at home at all time? Because I want to warn everybody, you never know when someone comes unexpectedly, and it could be 10, 12. Specifically, John, with your beautiful living room here, it's gorgeous the way you have it set up and arranged. So
yeah, so that was actually a problem when I first started, because when I first started, I wanted to buy some wines that I could put away and let them age. And so I had 200 or 300 bottles to start. But then I realized I didn't have anything that I could drink right now because everything was aging. So I had 300 bottles, but I really had none because I couldn't drink any. And so then I had to find some that I could enjoy immediately. And what I found is that you can actually buy some, if you liked aged wines, for example, you can buy some back vintages that are ready to drink immediately. And that way you'll have some on hand. But, I would think if you had a pretty diverse group of wines, you could get by with maybe 100 or 200 bottles. And that would be a pretty good amount just to ensure you had something on hand if people came over and requested a certain wine.
I love it. I think that's the right amount. I fully agree. So now, for you, the history of America, because I know you love history, you love, a lot of great wineries in Napa, but as well, great wineries producing Zinfandel. So we thought we would engage you on the history of Zin and why you like that great variety, because this is true America.
It is, yeah. And so, mostly America, the grape growing regions all have international varietals. There's very few grape varieties that are indigenous to the United States. So for example, people would go to Campania, for example, they have all these great indigenous varietals in Greece, but in Italy, of course, but you know, the United States, not so much. We have Zinfandel, and that's what we have. And so I think part of the problem is too that it has the reputation associated with white Zin when that was very popular as being kind of a sweet, lower budget wine that wasn't really for serious wine drinkers. But you know what I've learned is that there's actually some very, very impressive red Zinfandel being produced in California, oftentimes with some very old vines that are maybe 100 years old, 120 years old, and really some very, very impressive wines coming out of California from Zinfandel.
That's right. And you know, how would you describe this wine and what would you pair it with? As you're very close with Chef Dat, who is so creative and charismatic in the kitchen and so really fantastic to come up with so many creative recipes. What would be yours?
Yeah, so definitely I'm getting a lot of red fruits, getting some, you know, some raspberries, some red cherry, red plum, definitely some spice. I always get some really intriguing spice notes with red Zinfandel. And one of my all-time favorite pairings with red Zinfandel is barbecue.
Yes.
And you get those smoked meats, and I think it's an absolutely magical combination with red Zinfandel.
So you've become very Texan.
I have, definitely. And in fact, I was so Texan that I rejected the turkey for Thanksgiving and would instead get barbecue and then have friends over, and we would have a barbecue Thanksgiving, and then I would pair it with red Zinfandel pretty much all night long, because you're even getting a little bit of cranberry type notes and that refreshing acidity, and it pairs extremely well with barbecue and in those side dishes that would usually be served for Thanksgiving.
I agree with you. Incredible cranberry feel.
Definitely.
Now, what do you think about the Texas wine region?
I have to go there again. It's been probably 9 or 10 years since I visited. You know, at the time, my thoughts were that it was a fun place to visit, and it's always a pleasure to visit the wineries and to enjoy the scenery. And it's maybe about a 4-hour drive from here. But at the time, my consensus was that the wines at the high end there were enjoyable. So you could maybe spend $40 and enjoy a bottle of wine that they had, but you could get a wine that you can enjoy probably just as much or more than that from a place like California for about $20. And so I think that at least at that time, the value proposition wasn't there. But for people who really want to be Texan and support Texas, I think certainly that's a good way to go. And I understand that they've been making a lot of progress since then.
Yes.
So I probably need to revisit and do another trip there.
Well, maybe we should meet there, because I'm very bullish about it. I've been tasting a lot of great wines out of Texas, and I think very intriguing. And I think of Zinfandel, or obviously Tempranillo, Petit Syrah, Syrah, and other maybe Rhone, Spanish grape varieties could grow very well down there.
Definitely. I've tasted some very nice Tannat. You know, the last Texas wine I had about a year ago was a Tannat, and that was a very impressive wine. I did enjoy that very much. And, you know, I'll ask you this question. And, you know, one thing that I've tasted that I've really enjoyed is Taurasi, Aglianico.
Yeah.
And Aglianico, as you know, it requires a long growing season, but it has really nice acidity. And even when it gets really warm, it still has refreshing acidity. So I would think that perhaps Aglianico may be a good choice for Texas as well.
Fully agree. Fully agree with you. Now, talking about wine region, what are your favorites to visit?
Okay, so I've been to a number of wine regions over the world, and I'll tell you that I'm saving Burgundy. So I haven't been to Burgundy yet. I've been to probably 8 or 9 different regions in France. And, you know, certainly Champagne was incredible, and Bordeaux, you know, seeing all those chateaux just up and down the street that you've tasted over the years growing up was really an incredible experience. Of course, I started out by going to Napa and was there again 2 weeks ago. And And Napa is almost like going to my grandma's house because I enjoy it so much and I'm there so often. So,
Well, we cannot wait for you to come to Burgundy now, because as much as we love to see you in Napa, I think it would be great to dive into the old world.
definitely. And I'd been saving that because traditionally my bigger trips to Europe had been over the Christmas holiday. And so a lot of the places then were closed down. And I wanted to make sure that I could go during a time period when I was able to get the full experience. And so that's why I've saved it.
Yeah, I know. That's, well, we cannot wait to have you. So tell us, what's your dream? What's the next big thing from a very successful law practice dealing with great wineries as well, which you've accomplished your dream of marrying your business to obviously wine and your passion. What's next?
I think, well, I'm actually kind of living the dream right now because everything I'm doing, I enjoy. I enjoy practicing law, and I do that most of the time in the day. And then I also enjoy the wine pursuits very much. And I do that on the weekends and during the evenings. And so I'm really doing exactly what I've hoped to be doing. And I really wouldn't change it, and just hope to keep doing it and to get more and more experiences and travel more often, certainly, because that's been kind of hindered the last year or so. So I'm looking forward to ramping that up again and getting back out there.
Well, that's exciting. You have a mini red room like at Raymond in your house right now. You have the beautiful sconces, the gorgeous 18th century frame, medallion shape. I mean, it looks amazing. When are we doing a dinner at your house?
Whenever you're in town, just let me know. I'd be happy to set it up, and we'll be sure to get Carla and Chef Dad over as well.
Absolutely. We're going to need some wine and food help for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's very exciting. And John, thank you so much. I'd like to ask you the last question. What's your big message to the world now that you accomplish so much on your own and so much in the world of wine and law and food and friendship and connection around the world and WSCT? I know you're going to get a positive answer. So what's your message to all of us?
Sure. So I would say that if I've learned one thing over the years, it's that it's important to keep an open mind, whether it's about wine or food or traveling or people you meet, anything. There's always something you can learn. And I think rather than just jumping to conclusions or staying set in your ways, I think it's very important to be able to experience as much as you can and to learn as much as you can. And if after you try something you don't like it, then that's fine. But at least it's an informed decision. But I think people need to not be as quick to jump to conclusions oftentimes. And certainly I've done that myself over the years, but I really try not to. And I try to, for example, with wine, I try to taste everything, taste broadly. I travel all over, and I've realized that there's excellent wine being made in every single region of the world from every different grape. And so you can't just say, I don't like this and I hate that. I think depending on the producer and where the grapes come from, you very, very well enjoy it.
I love it. So a big message to being open-minded, to receive the world, to let the world unfold on your table, and to be non-judgmental.
Absolutely.
And to be as inclusive as we can. I love it. So John, thank you so much. Dear friends, go on John Jackson. You'll see in the chat his email and obviously Instagram and Facebook and all of that. Follow him. And if you need any advice on privacy and intellectual property, he's the man. Thank you, John.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Cheers.
Cheers.
Santé.